Recently at work, I was speaking with a peer, broaching all manner of topics and subjects, exhibiting wisdom and sagaciousness, and enumerating and pontificating at length. I already knew that word, screw you. As we talked, as you can imagine, we started discussing video games. After all, this is a video game focused channel. And as we continued, I realized that I was referring to many older games that he hadn't played. And so I asked him if he would ever go back and play through those games to see what they had to offer. And his response left me sort of stumped. He said, "Why play older games when new games are better?" And this really got me thinking. I mean, are modern games really better? I mean, like, the obvious answer is, of course, no, or for those of you in law school, not necessarily. But the assumption that the old is inferior simply by way of being older is not one that can be backed up easily, but I do think that there's a shred of truth in every exaggeration, including this one. You see, I retorted with the example that by most accounts, modern works of art are empirically better, at least in the sense that they are larger, more dynamic, easily distributed, effortlessly viewed, and can be created with a level of fidelity greater than ever before thought possible. However, we should not consider these metrics to be the ones within which a particular work of art should be judged. Rather, we should judge the merit of a particular work of art on whether it's able to successfully convey a message. After all, the purpose of a piece of art is to make us think, and if it succeeds in that conquest, then it succeeds in fulfilling its purpose. When you look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, for instance, you are immediately overcome with an immense sense of wonder and a remarkable feeling of insignificance paired wonderfully with the sensation of drowning in the skill and wisdom of those who have come before. That is its purpose, and in fulfilling it, it succeeds. It may be centuries old and as a result be worn, cracked, and faded, but it still succeeds in fulfilling its purpose and is therefore worthy of being viewed and appreciated. A work of art is not less valuable simply because it's old, and to say so would be to disregard centuries of wisdom and intelligence, and that would be a horrible mistake. But I know what you're thinking. How the hell is he going to tie this back to video games? And my response to that would be to demonstrate my vast knowledge of French. Touche. Okay, my point is simply that art does not die because it's not a living, breathing thing. It reflects a message and an emotion, and it can do that even when it's old and faded, and sometimes it even becomes more successful in that endeavor with age. As long as it succeeds in fulfilling its purpose, it is valuable. For a painting, its purpose may be to breed an emotion of despair and hopelessness, or perhaps hope and rebirth, and if it succeeds in this, it is valuable inherently. If the purpose of a video game is to give the player a feeling of joy and fulfillment, as long as it serves as a means to that end, it's valuable. And so after all of that, we have to ask ourselves the very simple question: what is the general purpose of video games? And I think personally that it has changed throughout the years, and it can even change on a game-by-game basis. For example, a game like Just Cause 2 is all about catharsis and chaos. It's about fulfilling your primal urges to wreak havoc and cause destruction, and as a means to that end, it succeeds. It does not give players an intense moral question like some games.
Magnificent, isn't it? One of the first intelligent models developed by CyberLife. Young and beautiful forever. A flower that will never wither. But what is it really? A piece of plastic imitating a human? Or a living being with a soul? It's up to you to answer that fascinating question, Connor. Destroy this machine, and I'll tell you all I know. Or spare it, if you feel it's alive. But you'll leave here without having learned anything from me.
What in the... I thought this was supposed to be mindless fun that didn't challenge my brain in any way, shape, or form. Well, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna go play a game that's more my speed. Instead, it just wants you to feel like an action hero with no responsibility or capacity for regret over his actions, and it works. A game like The Last of Us, on the other hand, is trying to tell an emotional story about a broken man trying to learn to love again in a post-apocalyptic universe where zombies rule the world. It's not trying to be funny or campy, but rather take you on a journey of self-discovery and intense emotion. These games succeed in fulfilling their purpose because they are phenomenally well made, not because they had big teams, studios, and budgets and all sorts of things.
But they did have all of that stuff, you son of a...
Okay, yes. All of these examples had big dev teams and budgets. In other words, they had assets and the time to polish the experience that they were trying to deliver. But that does not mean that these titles succeeded in their pursuits simply because of their budgets and support structures. Remember, correlation does not equal causation. But regardless, in any artistic pursuit, the moment that you've made it and when you can create your best stuff is when you have the ability and the power to say no. It's in these moments where you have the power over your medium and you can create what you desire to create instead of what you are being forced to fulfill in order to meet some artificial quota. For example, take this interview with world-renowned playwright Samuel Hunter. He's actually one of my favorite authors of all time because he can flawlessly blend a very realistic and believable character with an intense and meaningful plot line at the same time while setting it in a very mundane and drab setting like a Hobby Lobby break room or a defunct and insolvent nursing home. It's phenomenal. Whether it's a story about a father who has grown disconnected from his son after leaving him to his relatives so that he could join a cult, only to find out that the pastor of said cult was likely responsible for the death of a young man, at which point his entire world comes crashing down and he pursues a relationship with his estranged son to save what is left of his soul, as we see in his ironically named play, A Bright New Boise. Or a story about a morbidly obese gay man who is on his way out only to find meaning in life through a young, spry Mormon kid who inspires him to look at life anew, as we see in his play, The Whale. All of these stories are fascinating and well worth a read. I highly recommend them. However, in this interview, he says that the most artistically significant moment of his entire life was when he won the Macarthur Genius Grant, which is effectively $500,000 that they give you just as free money so that you can pursue the artistic or scientific endeavors that you want to instead of the ones that you have to. Again, the key to artistic success is freedom, not money. Money certainly helps, but if it were otherwise, every EA game would be a phenomenal work of art, and as Lord knows, that's not the case. Okay, we've gotten a little bit off track. The core question at the center of this whole discussion is whether or not old games are worse than new ones. And there is, of course, the obvious retort, like what defines an old game? Is that a year, 2 years, 5 years, a decade? And because everybody's answer to that question is going to be different, the question at its core is frankly kind of stupid. Of course, old games are valuable. Of course, what is old is still of merit. If we were to believe otherwise, all of our society and culture would just immediately begin to collapse. It just would be horrible. What makes the new truly cherishable as well is that we're able to contrast it with the old. And it's in that contrast that we assign and can discover what true value actually is. After all, if we don't know what was here before, how can we appreciate what was here now? How would we know it's worth a damn? How would we know anything? We wouldn't. It would be simply assigning arbitrary value onto something about which we know nothing. And that is just stupidity. The old should not be shed and forgotten. It should be cherished and valued, not just in the world of video games, but everywhere in the artistic space, even in your personal life. You have to value the old, not sometimes, but all the time and everywhere. Because to do otherwise would be to damn ourselves to a colorless and bland world lacking any true value and significance. So yeah, I guess my answer would be old games are still valuable. This is what I try to, when I try to make a video answering a simple question like, are old video games still valuable? It turns into this. This is what I do. This is my life. Thank you for watching.